Well, ladies and gentlemen, last night it was a doozy as Elon Musk invited Donald Trump to speak on X. So yes, Donald Trump is officially back on X, and that interview was very interesting. Donald Trump advertised it here. As you can see, again, his account is back and he says, enjoy. So you can see the picture here. It says Donald J. Trump and Elon Musk live on X. And I got to tell you, this space was crazy. I wasn't in the space very long because it was all over the place. I crashed at one point because there was too many people trying to sign on, but you get the gist of it. There were a couple of things that were discussed that I do want to bring up. There's a couple of clips that we're going to focus on in particular, but first and foremost, I do want to let you know that there was pressure from the EU on Elon Musk not to have this interview with Donald Trump. I want to go ahead and show you that piece of information here. Simon Atabahi has been on it. He said, just in censorship from Europe, EU Commissioner Thierry Breton urges Elon Musk to strengthen X platform compliance, cites illegal content and disinformation risk. There is a letter here. I'm not going to read this entire letter. Also, the print is very small, but to sum things up, he did say here, thanks for this, Simon, for summing this up for everybody. In case you did not read the text, well, he wants Musk to censor Donald Trump tonight. He writes, I am writing to you in the context of recent events in the United Kingdom and in relation to the planned broadcast on your platform X of a live conversation between a U.S. presidential candidate and yourself, which will also be accessible to users in the EU. So for those who are not aware, there is heavy censorship that is taking place in the UK right now. This stems from the racial riots that have been happening in the UK and some of the content that was posted on social media there. They are heavily starting to censor that. And now they're pressuring Elon Musk to do the same. So it is quite a doozy that's happening, guys. You know how I feel about censorship. I don't agree with it at all. But nevertheless, let's go ahead and get into this discussion that took place last night. So one of the first things I do want to highlight is that Donald Trump called Kamala Harris further left than Bernie Sanders. I want you to hear this. This is crazy. This is wild. Of course, Elon Musk was agreeing with him. Let's go ahead and bring in this piece here.
Sort of overnight is they're rewriting history and making Kamala sound like a moderate when in fact she is far left, like far left.
Worse than Bernie Sanders. She is considered more liberal by far than Bernie Sanders.
Let me go ahead and pause there. Okay, come on, guys, let's get real. This is ridiculous. I'm not a fan of Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris may be a lot of things, but she is not further left than Bernie Sanders. So this is exaggeration from the Trump campaign. And these are the kind of things that I've been speaking about, that both parties have been exaggerating about their candidates with a little bit of truth mixed in between, right? So the litmus test for progressives is Medicare for all. Obviously, that's the easy one, the big one, to support Medicare for all. Remember, Kamala Harris flip-flopped on that when she was running for president in 2020. First, she said she agreed with Medicare for all and we need to move towards a Medicare for all system. But after she received pressure from corporate media, she decided to reverse course on that. It's one of the many things that Kamala Harris has flip-flopped on. I just did a video recently about her flip-flopping on the border. I just did a video last week about her flip-flopping on fracking. So this is an idea of what a Kamala Harris presidency may look like, the flip-flopping, right? And both of them have done this. Donald Trump has flip-flopped as well, too, when he was president in 2020. Let's go ahead and continue here.
She's a radical left lunatic. And if she's going to be our president, very quickly, you're not going to have a country anymore. And she'll go back to all of the things that she believes in. She believes in defunding the police. She believes in no fracking, zero.
Those are both lies. I'm sorry. So defunding the police, Kamala Harris was a cop. You're talking about a candidate. You're talking about a candidate that is known for locking up too many Black people in California. In fact, she imprisoned so many people that a judge had to tell her that the prisons in California were overcrowded. So she's known for being heavy and hard on crime. She's also known for just being a big ass cop. Like, it just is what it is. I have never heard Kamala Harris come out in support for defund the police. This is exaggeration again by the Trump campaign. So you see how this is happening. This is one of the things I think that is hurting Donald Trump's campaign, the exaggerations, saying that someone who's obviously not further to the left than Bernie Sanders is further to the left than him, saying that someone who obviously does not support defund the police and saying that they do support defund the police. And then there was the comment there about fracking. Now, remember, when she ran for president, she said she was for banning fracking. But in recent statements from her campaign, Kamala Harris has flipped on that. She is now pro fracking. And she is not going to ban fracking. So you see, this is dated information that Donald Trump is saying here. And also some of them are lies. Jesus Christ.
Oh, you don't. Now all of a sudden she's saying, no, I really want to see fracking. If they got in, the day she got in, she'll end fracking. And by the way, if people didn't think that, the lunatics that really believe in that, they won't vote for her. You know.
Didn't the Biden-Harris administration approve the Willow pipeline? Didn't they approve the Willow project? That happened under the Biden-Harris administration. In fact, this is some of the pushback that they have received from climate protesters, that they did not hold true to their statement about no more drilling, no more fracking. So again, not keeping up with information. Jeez Louise. This was a doozy, you guys.
Like the Palestinians and Israel. She is so anti-Israel, and she's bad for both. Biden actually did something that was impossible. Both sides hate him. You know?
Let me pause here for just a second. We're going to pop out. We'll come back into that clip for a second. This comment about Kamala Harris, anti-Israel. I think those of us that have been following Israel and Gaza for quite some time, and the politicians who take the profits, know that that's not true. You can see that here. AIPAC Tracker has been tracking everyone, but you can see it yourself on Open Secrets if you look up any of these politicians. As you'll see here, again, here is Kamala Harris' record on Israel. Kamala Harris has received over $5 million from AIPAC. So this is not a secret to anyone who, again, has been following this information. But again, it's obvious that Kamala Harris does support Israel. AIPAC would not give her funding if she did not. So she's getting money from the pro-Israel lobby. There's a little bit more here, this clip that I want to show you here about Kamala Harris, her history with AIPAC. Shout out to Atra here. Let's be honest, Kamala is one of the most pro-Israel members of U.S. government in history. And she has the AIPAC receipts to prove it. Watch this.
And as Iran continues to launch ballistic missiles, while it arms and funds its terrorist proxy Hezbollah, we must stand with Israel. As Hamas maintains its control of Gaza and fires rockets across Israel's southern border, we must stand with Israel. I support the United States' commitment to provide Israel with $38 billion in military assistance over the next decade. It is why I support full funding for Israel.
Let me just pause here for a second. I want everyone to pay attention to what she said there. Notice that she said she supports $38 billion being funded to Israel from the U.S. government over the next decade. So for all the people that are interrupting her rallies and are telling Kamala Harris we need a ceasefire and to have an arms, embargo, stop giving arms to Israel, this is a waste of time. And I've said this before, because if you go back to the video footage, if you go back to history, you'll see she already agreed to $38 billion over the next decade. So Israel is already going to receive the $38 billion over the next decade. So when Kamala Harris tells these protesters in private that she may agree to an arms embargo, that is a lie. She already approved the money. So I don't know why Donald Trump is continuing to say that she's pro-Israel when we obviously just saw her at the rally tell protesters, if you want Donald Trump, keep at it. Otherwise, be quiet. I'm speaking. We've already seen her and her advisor make this very clear on social media and in the press that they do not support banning arms to Israel. So again, Donald Trump is making statements about Kamala Harris that is not helping the Trump campaign. It's actually making it worse. And you'll see that later on. Tuesday evening when I cover the recent swing polls, how she's gaining in the polls, how she's beating him now in the swing states. And again, it's like, if you are going to go after Kamala Harris, you go after her record as a prosecutor. You go after her involvement with the Biden-Harris administration. You attack her on the border. She was assigned to the border. That's what you do. Instead, Donald Trump is making statements about Kamala Harris that are easily debunked if you just go to social media.
Including for the Arrow, David Sling, and the Iron Dome missile defense systems, which save lives. So let me be clear about what I believe. I stand with Israel because of our shared values, which are so fundamental to the founding of both our nations. I believe the bonds between the United States and Israel are unbreakable, and we can never let anyone drive a wedge between us. I believe Israel should never be a partisan issue. I will do everything in my power to ensure broad and bipartisan support for Israel's security and right to self-defense. I believe that when any organization delegitimizes Israel, we must stand up and speak out for Israel to be treated equally.
And there you go, folks. I mean, I don't know what else to show you or what else to tell you, but it's obvious that these things can be debunked, these statements that Trump is making about Kamala Harris. Let's go back to that part of that conversation with Elon Musk.
You know, both sides. That was a hard thing to do. Unification.
Yeah, no. I mean, Netanyahu came to give a talk to a joint Senate and House sitting, and I was there, and Kamala stood him up. What does that say?
Yeah, Elon, why were you there? You shouldn't have been there. People should be pushing back on the fact that a billionaire was sitting in Congress, especially when it's an issue about foreign policy. He shouldn't have been there at all. And let's not make this, greater than what it actually is. This whole statement about, well, she stood Netanyahu up. No, he knew she wasn't going to be there. That was already spoken about. And it's not like she was trying to, give the middle finger to Netanyahu. She was at a prior engagement with a sorority. She did meet with Netanyahu after that talk to Congress. So let's stop pretending like what she did was this grand gesture. A lot of people are falling for this, and I would hope that people would be smarter.
I think it's highly disrespectful. And I say, if you're a Jewish person, or if you believe in Israel, if you're a person that, is a very pro-Israel, if you vote for her, it's worse than Biden, and Biden was bad. But if you vote for her, you ought to have your head examined.
So, yeah, obviously, I just showed you the receipts there that she is definitely pro-Israel. Like I said, if you're going to attack her on her record, get her on something else. Now, I want to pivot to another part of this conversation where they decided to talk about foreign policy. I want to bring in this piece here from Hotspot. They were on it last night. We have enemies on the outside and we have enemies in the inside. Oh, buddy. So this conversation got a little interesting here. They're talking about a little bit about the deep state.
I always say that we have enemies on the outside and we have enemies on the inside. We have some really bad people in our government, and people that are controlling of the people. I mean, I'd mention names, but I really don't want to give them the credit.
No, mention those names. It's interesting. Like, part of this conversation, when I was listening to it, like, part of me was like, I feel like I'm hearing things that I probably should not be hearing. Like, this is a private conversation that I shouldn't listen in on. But yeah, I mean, this is something I think we've been talking about, obviously, on this show for quite some time, that there are people in the inside, whether it's the alphabet letter agencies, whether it's people like Antony Blinken that are really moving the needle on foreign policy. A lot of people do point fingers at the president because they can make executive decisions about foreign policy without the approval of Congress. One of the only matters that I know of that they can do that with. But at the same time, you do have key players, the CIA, who wants to implement coups all over the world. These are the organizations that we do need to look at.
But we have some really bad, and I say they're more dangerous than Russia and China. If you have a smart president, a president that gets it, we are not in danger from those countries because they need us and they need our help. I mean, we forced Obama, if you think about it, Obama and Biden, and Bush to a certain extent, in all fairness, forced Russia and China together. And if you're a history student, the first thing you learn is you cannot let Russia and China align. But then they also got, if you take a look, Iran, and they have North Korea. That's, they call it the axis of evil.
I don't call it the axis of evil. Basically, the reason why some of these countries have decided to align is because they want a multipolar world, a multipolar society. They don't want one country dominating the entire world. And the US government has been doing that for quite some time. They have military bases all around the world. If any other country, if Russia or China had military bases all around the world, the US government would be up in arms. Probably would never even allow that to happen in the first place. But the reality is we have to look at the US role in dominating the world and policing the world, sanctioning all these countries, ruining their economy just so that the US can remain to be the number one dominant country. So ideally, what is going to happen is that those other countries that are tired of that are going to join forces. And that is what is happening.
In the old days, you had the axis of evil. Here we have a modern day axis of evil. These are powerful countries, very heavy nuclear, which is the biggest threat.
Yeah.
The biggest threat is not global warming, where the ocean's going to rise 1/8 of an inch over the next 400 years. And you'll have more oceanfront property, right? The biggest threat is not that. The biggest threat is nuclear warming, because we have 5 countries now that have significant nuclear power, and we have to not allow anything to happen with stupid people like Biden.
So what I would say about the nuclear power is I don't think any country should have nuclear weapons. How about we get rid of that? How about we get rid of, eliminate nuclear weapons altogether? That's what we should be aiming for. Not just, well, this country can have them, but that country cannot. We shouldn't have nuclear weapons at all. So really important part there. There's another one I want to get to here is where they talk about some of the other world leaders. Again, shout out to Hotspot. He goes on to discuss Putin and Xi and Kim Jong-un. Let's get into this part here.
The immense importance of whether the United States president is intimidating or not intimidating, and how much that matters to global security. Because there's some real tough characters out there, and if they don't think the American president is tough, they will do what they want to do.
I know every one of them.
And it puts the whole world in danger.
Elon, I know every one of them, and I know them well. I know Putin, I know President Xi, I know Kim Jong-un of North Korea. I know every one of them. And let me tell you, people will say, oh, this is terrible. He said, I'm not saying anything good or bad. They're at the top of their game. They're tough, they're smart, they're vicious, and they're going to protect their country, whether...
He says they're at the top of their game. He's 100% right about that, but it's not just about them protecting their country. It's about them protecting and providing for their people, right? So I have had a lot of students from China. I've had students from Russia, and I can tell you they didn't seem to express any strong desire to reside here in the United States after they finished their education. They were willing to go back home because they said, my students from China told me I can go back to China and get a job like that because I have a degree from an American university. I will be guaranteed housing in China. Tucker Carlson had to go to Russia to wake people up, to show them how people are actually living in Russia. When you take care of your people will take care of you. It's very common sense, ladies and gentlemen. So yes, they're at the top of their game economically. And if you are pro-capitalist, you should be okay with that. This is where I push back on the capitalism, right? A lot of people who say they're pro-free market have a problem with other countries participating in that market, especially when it gets to the point where they are a competition for the US. So are they really pro-free market? I don't know. I am not for capitalism. I think capitalist system has done this country a lot of damage. I think we are not providing for the people. We have too many poor people in this country. But the reality is Russia and China, yes, they are economic competitors to the United States. And I think the US is trying to do everything in their power to stop that.
They love their country. They probably do. It's just a different form of love, but they're going to protect their country. But these are tough people at the top of their game. And when they see a Kamala or when they see Biden, Sleepy Joe, they can't even believe it. They can't believe this happened.
The immense importance of whether the United States president is intimidating or not intimidating, and how much that matters to global security. Because There's some real tough characters out there, and if they don't think the American president is tough, they will do what they want to do.
I know every one of
and
them.
it puts the
Yeah.
whole world in danger.
Elon, I know every one
It's
of
a
them,
big
and I
deal.
know them well. I know Putin,
Yeah.
I know President Xi, I know Kim Jong-un of North Korea. I know every one of them. And let me tell you, people say, oh, this is terrible. He said, I'm not saying anything good or bad. They're at the top of their game. They're tough, they're smart, they're vicious, and they're going to protect their country, whether they love their country. They probably do. It's just a different form of love. But
So then it just repeats there. But again, interesting, the conversation that was happening here. Now, there was another one as well. I wanted to see if I have this. Ukraine. Yes. I want to bring in the conversation about Ukraine. This one is very telling as well.
And I'm no fan of his. And he was a horrible president, the worst president in history. And one of the reasons he was so bad, first of all, the Israeli attack would have never happened. Russia would never have attacked Ukraine, and we'd have no inflation. And we wouldn't have had the Afghanistan. You take a few of those events away, and we have a different world. Many more people have been killed in Ukraine than you read about. You don't read about how bloody it is and how disastrous.
Sure.
Hey, look, just in the two armies, you lost 500,000 people. If you think about it, Russia's gone, Russia defeated Germany with us, and they defeated Napoleon. They've been around a long time. They're a big fighting force.
Yeah.
And Ukraine now doesn't have enough men. They're now using young men and very old men to fight. And we're in a very bad position. A smart president could have stopped that. It wouldn't have happened.
Yeah, so I want to talk about this for just a second. Yes, obviously, the war with Russia and Ukraine is a big problem. I've been talking about that on this channel for a long time. At the same time, I do want to bring up something else. A lot of people like to, praise Donald Trump because he didn't start any new wars, which is true, but he still implemented coups in Venezuela. He still bombed people in Syria. So let's not pretend that Donald Trump's hands are clean. That doesn't mean that he's anti-war. He's not anti-war. So there's that. That being said, I do wonder sometimes if he were president, if the war with Russia and Ukraine probably would not have started, because he seemed to have a better relationship with Vladimir Putin compared to Joe Biden. So that is one. I'll give him a point for that one. I'll give him a point for that one. And last but not least, I do want to show you this conversation here about the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. My comrade Nick from RBN said, bro, what is Trump doing? You're not supposed to say this out loud. Exactly. This is the same thing that I was thinking, but he did. But he did. Let's go ahead and start this from the beginning. Listen to this, folks.
Affected me, and it's just one of those things. And we would talk a lot about Ukraine. It was the apple of his eye. But I said, don't ever do it. Don't ever do it. I shut down Nord Stream 2. That was the big oil pipeline, the biggest pipeline in the world going all over Europe. I shut it down. Biden came, and then they say, I loved Russia. I was a friend of Putin, and I loved.
Probably not a good idea to be bragging about that, that you shut it down. Let this finish, and I'll tell you what I think and how I'm going to compare Biden and Trump when it comes to Russia.
No. He actually said to me one time, he said, if you're my friend, I'd hate to see you as an enemy. I shut down his pipeline, the biggest pipeline. They were looking at that to fund. And this pathetic president gets in there. And the first thing he did, one of the early things he did is he shut down Keystone XL pipeline, which is our pipeline that would have employed 48,000 people, pipeline workers, shuts it down. That was, a massive job that Obama refused to allow.
Yeah.
I allowed it in my first week because it was jobs and it moved oil. And by the way, in a much more environmentally friendly way. It's underground. It's not a truck that catches on fire or a train that catches on fire. But think of it. He shut down the XL pipeline, the Keystone XL pipeline.
Yeah.
He shuts that down and he approves the Russian pipeline.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. It's inconsistent.
Oh boy. Again, it was basically two billionaires just complaining to each other. So let's go ahead and say something here about this. I think what we need to take away from that part of the conversation, again, Joe Biden blew up the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. Donald Trump shut down the pipeline. What that tells you is that both parties are in bed with the billionaire class. Both parties consistently do not want other countries to get cheap gas. When Donald Trump says that he shut down the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, you have to remember this is during 2019 when there was pressure that was put on Germany not to get gas from Russia. So what it tells you is that both parties, whether it's Biden or Trump or Kamala, whatever, both parties do not want other countries to get cheap gas, to get cheap resources. They want it to belong to the billionaire class. So again, how are those parties different when it comes to that? Again, not something I think that he should have been bragging about. So there's that. You don't have to vote for Trump or Kamala. I just want to remind everybody, especially considering we're pulling Kamala, her campaign is complaining about this interview. They're mad that it happened. Let's get into this here. Simon Ataba again. Kamala Harris and Tim Walz attack Elon Musk and Donald Trump following a massive interview. Statement on Donald Trump's interview with Elon Musk. Donald Trump's extremism and dangerous Project 2025 agenda is a feature, not a glitch of his campaign. Again, now you have the Harris Foundation exaggerating. We've explained this multiple times before. Project 2025 is a part of the Heritage Foundation. They still keep trying to make this a Trump thing. Goes on to say, which was on full display for those unlucky enough to listen in tonight during whatever that was on X.com. Trump's entire campaign is in service of people like Elon Musk and himself, self-obsessed rich guys who sell out the middle class and cannot run a live stream in the year of 2024. Yeah, well, both parties are in bed with rich people. Kamala Harris's campaign is taking money from billionaires as well, but you're going to pretend like it's only Trump that's in bed with the billionaires. So again, ladies and gentlemen, this is how both parties are exaggerating. Both parties are lying, and both parties are pro-corporate class in the military industrial complex. You don't have to vote for Donald Trump or Kamala Harris. I will not be voting for either one of them. It's time to break this duopoly and start pushing third parties. So I can unequivocally tell you, I will be supporting Jill Stein for president. And I don't feel bad about that at all.